Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. Park Howell here, author of Brand Bewitchery and the guy who brings you story artists from around the world every week right here to help you craft and tell compelling stories that differentiate your brand in the marketplace, build your business, grow your sales, and develop your internal teams. Today, you get to hear from the Ragin' Cajuns, Jaci and Michael Russo, two brand strategists who provide another way to look at your brand story through their 4-step process. But first, your story marketing moment. The thing about a good story is that it scales, meaning it gets shared again and again and again. Stories, they just have a force all their own, and it's why I designed the story cycle system to be a virtuous spiral that expands with every revolution as your story grows. But to get your stories to scale, you have to undergo a mind meld of sorts. You have to share your story from your audience perspective so that they will make your story their story. And then when you deliver on the promises you make in your story, the scaling begins. Because now that they are the central character in your story, and they're enjoying the benefits you have provided them as they have bought into your story, making it their story, they'll not only return as repeat customers, but they'll share your story, now their story, with their world. And this virtuous story cycle system begins by you placing your customer at the center of your story to make it their story. You can learn how in my new book, Brand Bewitchery, that will show you how to wield the story cycle system to craft spellbinding stories for your brand. You can grab your copy right now on Amazon. You can get your Kindle version or jump over to iBooks and start making your story their story. Two people who know a ton about brand story scaling are Jaci and Michael Russo of brandRUSSO, a strategic brand agency in Lafayette, Louisiana. They're here to show you exactly how to do it.
So you know you're doing something right when you get these national DJs talking about your creative on their broadcast and playing it over and over again, trying to figure out if it's actually Matthew McConaughey as the voice and doing their own McConaughey impressions. All right. I mean, it was awesome. I am surprised he doesn't have a chapter on this in his Greenlights book, because this has to have been as big to his career as it was to ours.
Before becoming a master brand strategist, Jaci hustled as a junior talent agent at Creative Artist Agency, or CAA, in Los Angeles, California, later working as Barry Dillard's right-hand woman. And she put that in there, right-hand woman. Today, back in Lafayette, Jaci is involved in strategic operations at brandRUSSO and dedicates much of her time to civic organizations and local nonprofits. To fulfill Russo's mission in helping businesses build their brand, Jaci hosts brand builder workshops and contributes to brandRUSSO's Razor branding blog and podcast to help various industries distinguish themselves amongst competitors in their field. She is a graduate of the University of Louisiana and a professional certified marketer through the American Marketing Association. Jaci is a die-hard Ragin' Cajun fan. When she isn't running her business, you can catch her in her Cayenne the Pepper suit or around town with her husband and 4 kids. Speaking of her hubby, you are going to meet Michael Russo. He has over 20 years of creative experience with a vast array of clients from coast to coast. He's an award-winning art director, copywriter, and designer, and he's been recognized by the American Advertising Federation, the Silver Microphone Award winner, the AIGA, so on and so on and so on. Very, very accomplished. He's also a member of the American Advertising Federation, the AIGA, and a voting member of the Recording Academy of Arts and Sciences. You know, they're the ones that call out the Grammy Award winners. He's also currently a Silver Council member and judge of the International Telly Awards. I could go on and on and on, but it's time to bring him in. And I just got to let you know that the beginning of this interview got a little bit out of hand. You see, I met Jackie in 2008 when Michael Gassa Fuel Lines hosted us, 5 of us, agency owners in Birmingham, Alabama, to help us sort out our own brand stories. So I've known her ever since, and we've had so much fun chatting. She and he are very vivacious, and I just got to tell you, there's no real official intro to the show. We're just going to pick up our conversation already in progress. It's just the way Jackie rolls. We had, I don't know, about 6 inches of snow 2.5 weeks ago, and then it's been just beautiful and starting to warm up. Did you guys get hit with that blast?
The ice apocalypse. Yeah, we did. We were shut down for about 5 days.
Which is a typical Thursday for Michigan, but down here.
We were able, our internet survived. We lost power for a little while. We had to drip our pipes nonstop. So I don't even want to think about the water bill. But we're in a house that's 3 feet off the ground. And so all of our pipes are exposed. And so whenever we get below 30, it gets risky with everything freezing and breaking. And we got down to 12. So that's a hard freeze for us.
Yikes. Yeah. But so you said you were down for 5 days. Is that electrical power was out, but you still had internet somehow?
Like we were homebound. We were ordered off the streets. There was a stay-at-home curfew for 5 days.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So I see you're on the treadmill there to stay warm. Is that right?
That's right. Now listen, if this is a sound that's going to bother you, I know it's going to annoy Michael.
It's a sound that bothers me.
I'll turn it off.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you asked.
No, I want this to sound good, so I'll turn it off.
Now, Michael, are you in another part of the house in the studio or something? Or
no, we're both at the office today.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, we're back in the office now. It just was dicey that week.
So you're not in a storage room in an athletic complex somewhere in northern.
No, but my office does feel that way sometimes. I feel like I'm in a closet. I'm in a tucked away
low
bunker.
Ceiling.
Yes.
If he stands up, he can put his hand on the ceiling.
But the rest of the office is like 20 feet tall. So I'm just like in a little nook in the back of the building. So,
well, talking about the ice apocalypse, COVID, and everything that has happened in the last year to all of us, it's just no wonder we find ourselves in all of these different predicaments. And yet the show must go on, correct?
Indeed.
I'm so glad you both are here today. Thank you for hosting me last month on your incredible show. That was a lot of fun. And thank you for sending me, the pre-edition of your new book, He Said, She Said Branding. I just had a kick reading through it. And I'm really glad that your marriage has stayed intact.
So are we, and so are our kids.
Your kids and your business is booming. So what problem besides COVID and the ice apocalypse are we going to be solving for our listeners, those CMOs out there, those business owners that are trying to understand how to use story to rise above the noise and be heard in this world?
Well, Michael's the lead when it comes to that here. He thinks like a poet and a songwriter, and I think our copy for our clients and ourselves reflects that. I would tell you that I approach it from a very strategic standpoint. For me, it's about elimination. How do you get down to the things that are important and get away from the overwhelm that seems to occupy all of our time and attention right now?
Without a doubt. Well, let's start first with your backstory, of which you cover quite hilariously, I might add, in your new book. Can you give our listeners a little bit of backstory about how you two find yourself where you are today with your business?
It's kind of intertwined with our lives. Jackie we're both from Louisiana, we're born and raised, and she had gone to California, worked in Los Angeles in the entertainment industry. I was working in Seattle after college. We both moved home around the same time, got set up on a blind date, long story short, got married, started having kids. And at that point, we kind of realized,
wait a minute. Not long story short, that blind date, you took her out and I think you had $1.75 in your pocket. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I'm still living that down. And I'm kind of mortified that story is being publicized right now by us. But yeah, the reality is I came home and had no money. I I went on it was around New Year's Eve, and I had another date that I went on that I can't remember the girl's name now, but and my friends were all more established than I was. So they went out and really spent a lot of money. So I blew all the cash I had, and I just moved back. So it was tied up in rent and car and all this other stuff. I didn't have a car in Seattle, so I bought one when I came here. So I had no money. And so we got set up on this blind date. We decided, well, look, let's hang out before we go there. So we went to this TGI Fridays, and basically I had no money, and I still went on the date. I'm not sure what was going to happen if she ordered more than I had. I had literally had no money, literally no money. And so we just ordered sodas all night, and somehow I got away with it.
You must be an awfully special guy for Jaci to hang around after that.
Well, I think the conversation was probably good. So, but yeah, somehow she went on a second date, and we went to a Mardi Gras ball, which was our official first date, and that was kind of, the rest was history. But we're both in advertising. We're both working at different agencies after moving back here to Louisiana, home, and had some bigger market experiences. And we just kind of realized that, we're both doing this for other people. We both had kind of two sides of the coin. She was more strategy, I was more creative, and we could probably do this for ourselves. And so we opened shop and kind of stormed through it all.
And Jaci, how about you? You had quite a background in LA, and that had to have been a bit of an awakening coming from Louisiana, I would imagine.
It was quite the awakening. I got there, and within a few months was able to secure a full-time real job. I bartended once I first arrived to pay the rent. And so my first job out of college was working at Creative Artists Agency as an assistant to a talent agent on a desk. My very first morning, I'm dealing with phone calls from Eric Stoltz and Beverly D'Angelo and Marlo Thomas and Jennifer Gray. And by the next day, I was called down to HR and told that I was being let go because my accent was too thick. Now, Park, I talked then just the way I talk now.
After one day.
They made it very clear that there were 50,000 people lined up for the 50 jobs that they had available every year. And so you either were top of your game or gone. And so, but I was like, I didn't have an accent. I mean, I may slip the occasional y'all in there for a little colorful, folksy tone, but I was a high school and college speech and debate champion, as I like to work into every conversation that I can.
Every day she mentions it to me at one point or another. I'm reminded of her speech prowess and argumentative abilities. I'm sorry. Go on, Jack.
He brought $1.75 on our first date. I'm just saying. So yeah, I was like, I will learn to pronounce all these words. I was coming from Acadiana, which is a part of Louisiana that was founded by French immigrants back in the 1600s. And so everything here has a French pronunciation, even though that's not my heritage. My family is Irish and German and Scotch. But I was growing up so then I moved to an area that has all Spanish influences, and the pronunciations on the syllables were different. And so I didn't know how to say Cahuenga and Spolvita and all those words. I was used to a Chafalaya and Thibodeau and Boudreaux. And so it took me a minute, but I got it together, and I was able to make a pretty successful career out there, had a great time, and then moved home. And as Michael said, the rest is history.
So how long ago did you start your firm together?
February of 2001.
Yeah, it's our 20 years this month, actually.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. And what kinds of clients and businesses do you work with and love? What industries do you love working in?
I would tell you that my favorite is when we can go in really immersed with the client and do strategic brand planning. And that really transcends any industry or size of company. Obviously, the scope of work changes if it's one small local jewelry store or one large national chain with 300 locations. And we've done both just in the past few months. And so the scope changes, the amount of time that it takes and effort changes. But at the end of the day, the product is still something that I would hang my hat on, because now all of a sudden people have a proactive plan that we can use in the right ways with the right messaging to tell the right stories to the right people to grow their business. And that's the most fun for me.
Yeah, I think it's we're very industry agnostic. I love that word people have been using a lot lately. I like it because we're not tied into one thing. And for a while we were. I mean, there were segments where we were all about healthcare, or we were all about this, all about that. Only because that's the business that we were getting. And that's what our sales team was striving for, But we've really managed to turn into any industry kind of branding process, which is hard for some people to buy into, because I think some companies are like, well, look, we want somebody that really understands aerospace or whatever, and they're specialists in that. I think that ends up getting you in trouble, because you end up with people that work inside of a box, and they don't live outside of it, and they don't live with real people. All they're doing is talking about this one industry and this one industry jargon. The thing is, what I think is that no matter what you're dealing with real people. And when you have experience in other areas, you're able to bring those into that industry and talk to people in the way that they need to be talked to. And I think that's what we do well in the form of messaging, and being able to tell those stories and be able to communicate in a way that's relatable and identifiable to whatever language you're speaking.
That's an interesting position to take, because I can tell you, you two are the first people in probably 3 years on this show that have not said, look, it's specialists eat generalists for lunch, that everybody is looking for a specialist out there. And I've seen it proved out in a lot of different places, but you are saying that you have really experienced the growth as being more of a generalist, but it sounds like bringing a very specialist approach to it that most, if not all, industries or clients can use. Is that right?
That's exactly right. When we had a big shift in our company in 2005, we were 4 years old. We had secured a couple of big clients. We bought, made enough money to buy a building downtown Lafayette and relocated. How we had managed to have 12 people working in about 600 feet, I don't even know. But so now all of a sudden we had 8,000 square feet to work with. It felt like, we had struck the lottery or something. And so we had that conversation, and I said, I'm telling y'all, now this is before social media and some other things. I said, we need to become specialists. That's where the industry is heading. This generalist approach is going to keep us as a small local agency, and I want more. I had tasted the good life in LA, and I wanted to live in Lafayette, but I wanted to work in Los Angeles and New York and Chicago and Dallas and Seattle. Budgets are bigger. It's fun to travel. At this point, I had 4 kids. I needed to travel away from my family on a regular basis to continue to like them. And so we had a conversation, and we went through our areas of expertise. I'll never forget, we had this huge wall in the conference room that we painted with whiteboard paint. And so I mapped it out on the wall, and I said, these are the areas where we have our most expertise. It's healthcare, it's finance, it's gaming. We've been doing a lot of casino work because that's big down here. We had done a huge push into some specialized manufacturing. We'd done some oil and gas. And so we started talking about the pros and cons of each of those industries, because we had 10, 15 case studies deep of really great track record success that I could have built an entire business around. And every time I would bring up one industry, the creative team, Michael, yes, but the rest of the team as well, would say, if we go all into finance, I just see a life of annual reports. If we go all into healthcare, it's just going to be this, or it's just going to be that. And I thought they had a fair point. Nobody wants to do the same thing every day. That's why we're not in-house somewhere. We want to have a lot of different clients and have variety, because it keeps our engine engaged. And I want to keep challenging us and not just pull out that ad we did for somebody 5 years ago, change the logo and send it out again. I had worked at those agencies. I didn't want this agency to become that. And so I said, well, I'll tell you what, if we're not going to be specialists in one industry, we need to be specialists in one modality, in one service line, in one thing we can do really well. And I think our core strength is our strategy. Our creative's great. We've won a ton of awards. When we remodeled this building, we built 3 shelves in the conference room, really nice, inset right above the great big TV where we do our web calls and everything. And we filled those quite quickly. And I was like, that's it. We don't need to enter any more award shows. We've won all the awards. They fit on the shelves. We're done. But strategically, I could see if we could really build out our strategic brand planning process, trademark it, own it, do it. It is industry agnostic, as Michael said. So that's our area of expertise and specialty.
So the point then you're making to our listeners is, I like the way you said that, specialist in one modality. So you are a specialist and around strategy, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, your 4-pronged approach of focus, promise, connection, and harmony. But first, I want to go back to the book, He Said, She Said Branding. I think I had that exactly backwards the first time I mentioned it. You talk about in the book the front of the house and the back of the house, which are typically restaurant terms, right? And I guess
Right.
maybe coming from your restaurants background. But if I've got this right, Jackie, you are the front of the house, right?
Correct.
Account
I'm the maitre
service,
d'.
strategy, the client relations. And then, Michael, you are the quote unquote back of the house where creative sits. Can you talk a little bit about that structure and why you do call it the front and back of the house?
Well, we did through college and even after worked in the restaurant business. Jackie was a bartender. I worked as a waiter and bartender and in kitchens and things like that. And it was it kind of fell into place that way. But we started to look at ourselves as that, like where Jackie's front of the house, she's talking to the customers, she's selling the menu, she's offering, letting them know what the specials are of the day. You know, she is the relations person, right? And when you think about a restaurant, the chef, you don't see him. He's usually in the back. He's usually working. And that's where I am at. I'm usually at a desk somewhere hidden. Every once in a while, they'll bring the chef out front. He'll put on his nice coat. He'll put on his hat. He'll walk out front and be nice and say, "Oh, how are we doing today? I'm going to make you something special." And people love that. They love meeting the guy that's creating stuff, you know, but he can't do that all the time. He's got to be in the back grinding it out. And if you've ever been in a kitchen, it's mess. I mean, it's dirty. Things are flying everywhere. It's sweat. It's a different environment, you know. And
Nobody wants to think their kitchen's dirty. Just FYI, maybe
messy.
Let's go with messy.
But the whole point was, like I said, all of a sudden we kind of fell into that role. And like our office is literally set up. We have an old building in downtown Lafayette, and there's like almost like a wall. It divides the creative suite, we call it, from the strategy suite. And we both kind of do our own things, and then we meet in the middle to kind of come up with the answers. And so our system kind of worked that way. And same thing in a restaurant where you have these pre-shift meetings where the kitchen will come out and the wait staff will come out and they'll talk about what's going on for the night, what their goals are, what are they trying to accomplish. And that's the communication. And then they go off and they do their thing. And so that's how we kind of figured out our duality of how we're going to function as an agency.
How many people do you have currently working for you?
About 23.
Wow. Full-time or some 1099ers? And
No, I think just about everybody's full-time. One of the members of our PR team is graduating this May, and so she'll transition from part-time to full-time. She every semester is like, "Can I quit now and just work full-time?" I'm like, "No, you got to get your degree. Keep going." And so she's got a few more classes, and then she'll wrap it up this May, and she'll be on full-time. And everybody else is pretty much locked in. We do have one guy who's a 1099 who pitches in when the back of the house is in the weeds, as they say in the restaurant business. And so he'll step in. But everything else we like to keep here. You know, it's our process. It's our way. It's not magic. It's just sound science. But we feel like it works. And so we like everybody kind of being in the fold.
How did COVID impact you as an agency? And did you have to let people go, or how did you manage through that?
Well, in January of 20, we had 18 people on the team. And in January of 21, we had 23. So no, we didn't let anybody go. We were very fortunate to be able to staff up during the year, not down. We had some real quick conversations internally. Mike and I talked about where we were sitting cash flow wise, client wise. We had some big things in the works that all of a sudden got paused. I was in the middle of Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business classes. Those went virtual. It was just that kind of shift everybody went through middle of March when it was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? We sat the team down at our standard 8 a.m. Monday morning meeting and said, here's the deal. We are operating business as usual. Our clients are going to start calling us right and left with problems and challenges. And so I need everybody focused on them and that. So you all have jobs. Your payroll is set. We will continue. Don't worry. No matter what happens, if we have to go into savings accounts, kids' college funds, drain our IRAs, we continue to survive. We've been here at this point. It was almost 20 years. It was 19. This isn't going to slow us down. Now, I did think at the time we were talking a month or two. So it was real easy to make that promise because I knew how much, cash flow we were sitting on. And obviously it's lasted a lot longer than that. But I didn't want anybody worrying or looking for another job or thinking they weren't going to be able to make house payments. We had 7 new babies at the agency in the past 2 years. And so, I've got all these families and I need to make sure they can still pay their mortgage. And one by one, 5 of them had spouses that were laid off or furloughed or just outright fired. And so we became their only hope. And so it was real easy for us to just comfort and secure them and then go to work on clients. We had a couple of clients who were shut down by the governor immediately, no operations whatsoever. And everybody else, we were able to find a way to help them pivot. We took a very high-end, fine dining, 3-hour, $500 dinner experience and create family dinners, curbside pickup, and they grew during the pandemic. We were able to take clients who were in manufacturing and had to shift from the things they normally make to making hand sanitizer or PPE or whatever it might be. And so we just one by one took every client and helped them find their pandemic pivot so that we could all survive.
I think internally we were fortunate that the way we do business, the way we work internally, worked with this new model that everybody's experiencing, because we already have a I don't know how you call it. When we started our agency, Jack and I wanted to. We both talked about this a lot. We wanted to have a place that we wanted to work at, and the place that we wanted to work at had no dress codes, had no time clocks, had no hourly billings. It was you were treated like adults, and if you had to leave for a doctor's appointment, you left for a doctor's appointment. You didn't have to schedule time for that, or you didn't. If you felt like working from home today, you just said, "Hey, I'm working from home today." That was the kind of environment we wanted to work in, and so when everybody got sent home, it was okay because everybody was already set up at home. They already had everything they needed. They didn't have to go figure out how do I work at home? No, they already were ready for that. So twice, I think we had somebody that had a, what do you call it?
Exposure.
No, not exposure, but you knew somebody that was exposed.
Contact exposure.
Contact, yes. We had everything.
Yeah.
So, but so we had like, okay, well, everybody's home this week. And so it didn't hurt anything. It didn't change our flow. It didn't change the way we did things. And so that was a benefit for us.
And to get you through that, this idea of you had a specialty, specialized in this modality. Let's talk a little bit more now about that modality, what it is, if you could define that for us, so we understand where you're coming from, and then what kind of impact do you think it had on helping you navigate and survive COVID better than a lot of agencies have?
I'll go first because this is the thing I love to talk about the most. I think that by having that pivotal conversation back in 2005 and being able to say, this is where we are. We're about strategy and creative. We're about the brand and believing truly that brand is not just the brand identity, but it's that emotional connection. And so it's all the story that goes around that. How do you build an emotional connection with somebody? You got to tell them stories. And so when we made that commitment in 2005 and perfected our process and wrote it down and said, this is how we do our job and this is the process we go through, then in 2008, when social media came on, that killed agencies. We grew through it because of it. We were one of the first agencies in the South to say, oh, hold on, businesses need to know how to do this stuff. This is important. And so we got our clients on social media rapidly. And as much as some of us, Michael Russo, hates it and still hates it, he won't be friends with anyone on Facebook unless they ask first. Like he won't extend a Facebook friend request. He only receives them. I don't even know what that means. But so we knew we had to get our clients up to speed. And so I think that because we had put these strategic brand plans in place for clients, because we had a process to adapt and evolve those as their business models changed and they grew and they expanded and they added new locations. And we knew how to work, on the fly remotely. I think all of that just lined up to this perfect storm that we were able to roll through this and allow those strategic brand plans to adapt. I'm a good strategist and planner to a point. Not one 2020 plan said in March, shut down, global pandemic, your life changes forever. Not one plan. And yet all of those plans were able to ride through because we account for change, because change is going to come. We just don't know what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have a lot of resiliency built into your strategy, it sounds like. Nicely
said. I'm going to use that.
Well, and how we've grown with that too. We have an internal thing we call razor branding, and it's like what you talked about: focus, promise, connection, and harmony are our 4 elements. And it's about basically the who, the what, the where, and the why. I may have got that in the wrong order,
but that's okay.
Yeah, but we want to find out, who your audience is and get to know them, and then once we know them, we can start talking about, what makes you special and what makes you important, why should they pay attention to what you have to say? And then we move into the connection part, which is, how do we connect with them on an emotional level? How do we find ways to show how what we do, our clients can benefit their lives, And then the last part, harmony, is all about where do we reach them now? Now that we figured all this stuff out, what channel do we go to talk to them? And because there's so many, like I said, I hate social media, and I do because I'm kind of an old school guy when it comes to, I would love to just do print ads and TV commercials because that's what I love. But the world's changed and we can't do that anymore. We have to change how we deliver these messages.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm old school too. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, Jim Knapp, out here last week. And Jim and I have known each other for centuries. It seems like he's been in media sales ever since I came to Phoenix back in '85. And we were just talking about lamenting the lack of creativity it appears in most messaging, digital messaging, and how wonderful that perfect billboard is that stops you in your tracks, and that print ad and the TV spot. My personal favorite, radio, and being able to write and produce something that creates a story and really lights up the theater of the mind that involves the listener, but you just don't hear that on air anymore. So that's all I will comment on my lament of advertising creative. But you can now, and you have to, and I think you guys are doing a good job of this, is approach it in really creative strategy. So would you share a case study or two or a campaign or two that you all have done and pull out each one of these 4 points, the focus, promise, connection, and harmony, and how that directed the creation and execution of the campaign and the outcome of that campaign?
Absolutely. And I'll go first and I'll let Michael pick the second one. So the one that I am first struck by is a dairy. It's a regional dairy. They were looking to move into a new market. And, it's milk. And so what do you think everybody's going to want to do? Some sort of rip off of the Got Milk campaign. And so we had to keep telling the client, well, first of all, no, it's trademarked. Second of all, no, it's overdone. Third of all, no, it's a bad idea. Fourth of all, no. So, it's hard, Park, sometimes to tell clients no, because they just love their own ideas so very much. And I like to think of it as a collaboration. And so we kept trying to work with them. And so I went back to them using the Got Milk account planning strategy story to explain to them how we were going to do something different, but it was going to work the same way. So when you think about the Got Milk strategy, it was all about a strategic initiative around deprivation, right? We don't have milk. And so and there's certain times we need it. We may not like milk, but there's nothing better with some chocolate chip cookies or cake or cereal. And so that's where that campaign came from. So what I explained to them was, when you're moving into this new market, let's look at you from that same kind of level. There's a heritage brand in this market that's been around for generations and generations, and everybody buys it because it's the one they grew up drinking. There's the cheap store brand. There's the high-end, super expensive organic. And you are not the cheapest. You haven't been here for decades, and you're not super healthy organic, but you're just as expensive as the organic. So we're going to have to use some clever strategy and creative to help build out a campaign around that that's really going to impact. And so what we did was we created an entire campaign around kids, obviously the driver, and we identified middle school kids who were outstanding in arts, athletics, academics, advocacy. Yeah, that's it. And so we had middle schools nominate these kids who were awesome in these different athletics in these different 5 areas. And we did a press conference around the kids. The founder of the company did pose for photos, gave them some samples of milk, some ice cream, and we did radio all about these kids. And it sounded like a movie trailer with the big movie voice talking about, in a world where seniors compete at this high level, because there's a junior high who was swimming on this varsity athletic team, varsity swim team. And another kid who had created a fundraiser in their community as an advocate to raise money for a cause that was affecting another member of her family. It was a boy who had made straight A's, all through school and had a perfect attendance record. And so we just did this whole radio campaign around it. And what do you know? They had been flat, flat, flat in this market, couldn't get traction. All of a sudden, in 6 months, 18% growth. And so that's where I felt like you had this perfect alignment of strategy and creative using our favorite storytelling technique of radio to really build it out. And as the dawn of social media is coming in, parents and family members were taking these radio spots and these stories about these kids and sharing them. And so it was not viral like we think of it today, but it was getting a lot of engagement and a lot of reach because we were using the family's network to spread the word.
So how does the focus, promise, connection, and harmony play out if you're using those as kind of your pillars to make sure that that's happening in your strategy? Where does that happen in that campaign?
So focus, as we went through and did our research, we realized we had to focus in on moms because although lots of people buy milk, moms bought it most often and they bought most of it. And so that was going to be our number one, who we were zeroing in on, not just women, but moms, specifically moms of that 4-year-old to 12-year-old kind of grade school kid or kids in this case. Then when we got to promise, why? Why would they pick this dairy over all the other options? Because we saw the obstacles. And so we knew we had to go outside of the container was the same. The product tasted the same. We weren't going to get anything else. So we zeroed in on the campaign itself became the thing that was unique and special, the way we recognized these kids and could connect with the moms through their kids. So then we got into the connection of what the message would be. That's where this 5A storyline came from with advocates, athletes, artists, and academics. And then we rolled into the where radio, least expensive. We could tell the most colorful stories and it could use social media to support it.
So the promise side of that, Jaci, then, is that the promise that the brand was there to help celebrate these high achieving kids? And maybe if your kid's not quite there yet, drink our milk and we will help celebrate them. Yeah.
That's exactly. As a matter of fact, that's how the ad ended. The ad ended with, and even if you don't drink this milk, you could still be this kind of kid.
Yeah. What I love about that is something that I profess all the time, and I'm sure you all do too. You can see it in your strategy, is it's not about what you make, but what you make happen. And that is the story you want to tell. So in this case, they make milk. I mean, can you think of a more commoditized item than milk? Oh, and it's expensive milk. So there's one more sort of ding against you. So it's not so much that you're selling milk, what they make, but what they make happen is this celebration of moms and their children and give your kids the best. And, then they can do their achievements at whatever level that may be. They don't have to be the superstar on the football team or the high GPA. It's just celebrating who they are.
Yep. Exactly right. Exactly. Now, Michael, I know you have a case study you like.
Well, it's a bunch. I was just thinking about it as you were talking, though, and it's what's funny is that some of our best work we can't really talk about because it's not like it's secret. Well, it is kind of some of it, but it's the stuff that goes in the back. It's this report that we do. Our process takes sometimes 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to put together, and it's all the research and the strategy and coming up with these solutions and finding problems that maybe they didn't even know existed through this process. Like there was a client that we worked with, and it was more B2B. And they said, hey, we need more business. Everybody says, I need more people walk through the door. I need more of this. And what we found out as we got to know them and got to know their clients and got to know their history, that they had some internal problems that they weren't even aware of. As we started talking to their staff and their team, and we realized that there was an internal rub that some of the younger partners had with the senior partners weren't aware of. And that was really causing some problems. And when we fixed that, when we pointed it out, we found solutions for that, which is not really our thing. We're not a HR company or anything like that, but we identified the problem. We said, this is how we can fix some of these things. Then we were able to move on to the marketing side and the advertising side. And it's amazing how much that got better once the internal part was clicking right, and everything was moving good. I always like to say, all these touch points that we talk about, from how you answer the phone to what you wear to what all these things matter in branding. It's not just the ad. It's like, is everything working together? Are you fulfilling your promise at every level? Once you establish what that promise is, your brand promise, your point of differentiation, whatever you want to call it, that thing that makes you special, that commitment that you have, whether it's to this or that or this. And like I said, some of those things that are internal that we can't go publicize a lot of this stuff because it's part of who they are, and areas their laundry in public kind of thing, but it's like, I love that part of it is when we figure out that problem. What is the problem? Let's find out what it is and then find the answer and then come out of that. Like one of the things, one of my favorite campaigns that we've done was it's up in Shreveport. They have like a bunch of casinos, like maybe 7 or 8 of them. And they're very, very tough competitors with each other. Well, they decided to come together for some reason because what happened was in Oklahoma, they opened some reservation casinos and they were north of Dallas. Shreveport was where Dallas was their main pocket, right? They pulled everybody from Dallas to come up and gamble for the weekend kind of thing. Well, now everybody was starting to go north. They were starting to go to these reservation casinos. They were closer. They offered better deals and things like that. And so they were like, what do we do? And so we came up with this really neat campaign, and it was basically it was Shreveport Bossier area, and we came up with a nickname. We started calling him Shereebo. It was like, hey, Shereebo, and it became a character, and he had a voice, and we did a lot of radio with this actually too. And it was a Matthew McConaughey character, and he was like, hey, y'all, I'm Shereebo, and all of a sudden we had a personality. We had somebody telling the story, and it was like connection. And so Jaci had some great ideas. Her and her team, they went and bought almost every billboard from Dallas to Oklahoma. And along the way, every billboard started saying things. It wasn't advertising the casino or the specials or come here for nickel this or that. It was, what was it, Jaci?
Just okay.
Yeah, so much better than okay. So much better than Oklahoma. But we started saying that, it was like, it's just okay up there. I mean, you can go up there and it's okay. Would you rather an okay experience or do you want to come to Shereebo? And all of a sudden we were like showing black and white. Like, you can go up there and do this, but do you really? Is that okay? Don't you deserve better than just okay? And it was like every board, and we did them on the way there and the way back. So if they left there, because we found out that they were, after doing our research, that people that were going up there were unhappy because of certain penny ante slots or nickel slots or things like that. They had these requirements up there that you didn't have in Shereebo. And so we pointed that out. We're like, don't you deserve better? And it was huge.
And let's be clear, it's a lot about drinking.
It was drinking. That's what it was.
Okay, casinos, you had a 2-drink maximum, and at the Shreveport casinos, it's a 2-drink minimum. I mean, let's just be honest, cards on the table. It was about a lot more fun partying in Louisiana than partying in Oklahoma.
That's the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line of drinking. I totally get it.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
But it was a win all around, though. It was just a positive experience.
All right, but tell them what happened to the radio spots.
What?
The one in Dallas.
Tell me, I don't know.
So we had this campaign running, and it's kind of small. We did it just to kind of start testing the waters and see if we get traction. Well, Walton and Johnson picks up the spot and starts running it on their show and talking about it. We didn't pay for that.
Yeah.
So you're doing something right when you get these national DJs talking about your creative on their broadcast and playing it over and over again, trying to figure out if it's actually Matthew McConaughey as the voice and doing their own McConaughey impressions. All right. I mean, it was awesome. I am surprised he doesn't have a chapter on this in his Greenlights book, because this has to have been as big to his career as it was to ours.
I don't know about that.
Well, that's the power of story. They scale, don't they? When you hit it just right and you hit that nerve just right. And were they playing off of the idea of not only Matthew McConaughey, but you guys taking a shot at Oklahoma? It's just okay, which is really a brilliant little fun thing to do.
Yeah, they loved it.
All right. So finally, why did you write He Said, She Said branding, and what will readers get from it?
I'll go with the why we wrote it, and Michael can tackle what we get from it. So it was a little thing called a pandemic. We had some time on our hands, and we were looking for pivots and looking for opportunities to figure out how we would continue to stay relevant. And I thought, if we started working on this last year in the summer, we would probably wrap it up just in time for our 20th anniversary in February of 2021. And so what a great way to kind of bookmark this 20 years with a book talking about how we got here and what it's meant to us and our process and how it works. And, Park, you've written some bestsellers. It's nice to have that little bit of legitimacy and people thinking, oh, you really know what you're talking about. You have a book.
And Michael, what will readers get from it?
I mean, it's a little bit of silliness in there because we put a lot of, it's literally every chapter is us kind of back and forth, which is kind of our relationship and how we run our business. But I think we wanted to kind of humanize the branding process, and because I think that's the biggest thing we've had a challenge of over the past 20 years is our most successful attempts at this stuff is when we have a client that gets it, and it doesn't always work out. I mean, sometimes, this, I mean, it's a bad match, or the client wants more, their expectations are different than what we're bringing them, and they have to buy in. They have to buy into the branding process, understand, because we're doing that right now. We have a client that they're so worried about transactional, everyday turn of events. I want quick sales, and I want discounts and coupons, and I need to get people in the door, and it's immediate one-offs, and we're looking at a bigger picture. And people will say, well, that takes too long. It takes years for that to do. I don't have the budget for that. And I'm like, no, it's not about that. You're missing the point. You don't have to have a mass media campaign. You don't have to spend millions of dollars to saturate the market. You can do it more targeted and still have a branding message inside of it, still connect with people, still understand what you're trying to say. And I think that's really important. And so we spent a lot of time in the book talking about what a brand is and how it relates to today's world and how it's effective. It's an effective marketing tool if you use it. And you don't have to be Coke and Pepsi and Budweiser to use it. You can be a B2B business in a region and still use the benefits of branding. Does that make sense, Jaci, what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Okay. And where can we get our mitts on your book?
Well, it just went live with pre-sales on Amazon yesterday. So there is a link. Thank you very much. You can go to our website, and we've got a page set up there, which is brandRUSSO.com. You can go to Amazon and look for it. You said it properly in the beginning, I think, because you said, she said, he said, which I think would be correct. But I got outvoted in that board meeting, and it quickly became he said, she said, which means his name became first on the byline. But since he did about 95% of the work, I'm going to let that happen. I'll just continue to take all the glory.
It's a huge problem right now.
I was wondering that when I corrected myself, and I thought just naturally it was a she said, he said. And then I looked over, I go, no, I got that exactly backwards. And I asked myself, how could a guy who took Jaci out on a $1.75 blind date get top billing in their combined book?
I wonder daily, Park. Daily, I wonder.
I'm hearing about it daily right now, too. But
final question, Jaci. After that first day at CA, they said you were fired. What happened?
I talked my way back in, as I do with most things. I asked them to give me another chance, give me a few more days, let me get my pronunciation right. I immediately found a couple of assistants who had been there a lot longer than me and said, I obviously went into this thinking I knew a lot more about work life than I did. So give me the inside scoop. What do I need to know? Who do I need to be friends with? I need a guide. And so I rallied a little group around me. I think that I do a lot of things really well, but I would describe myself, if I was to pick my best strength, it would be as a connector. And so I went and connected myself with the people who were the cool kids in class and could provide a little protection. It wasn't quite jail yard politics. I didn't have to don the orange jumpsuit, but it was pretty darn close to figuring out who were the big dogs in the yard and making sure that they were my friends. And then I had a great experience after that. It was honestly some of my best memories. And it's the little things. It's the holding Al Pacino's Oscar for Scent of a Woman. It's, riding in an elevator with Tom Cruise. It's going to the Evita movie premiere with Madonna. And I say with her, I was about 6 feet behind her the whole time, but we were together. Stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time in frigid Lafayette. And just so great to have you here on the show. Jaci, you and I got acquainted about 2008, I think it was, roughly, when you guys were going through this. And I was doing something similar with Parking Company and Michael Gass, a gentleman he is from Birmingham, Alabama, got us all together, about 5 of us. And we just had a splendid time over a long weekend getting to know each other and learning from each other. And it's just great to be back together, 12, 13 years later. And I'm just delighted to hear how well your firm is doing. And it's no big surprise now that I've gotten to know you even better. And Michael, now on 2 different shows. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure. We need a reunion from that trip because that was a great weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. If you've got an agency or maybe you've got a friend, family member that is running an agency, share this episode with them. There's a lot of great wisdom here. And I think my major takeaway is I've had so many people on this show saying you have to be a specialist if you're going to make it in the advertising world. And I think Jaci and Michael are proving it that you do have to be a specialist, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in an industry. It's in an ability. It's a modality. It's what they do and how they bring humanity and empathy and fun and wit to their marketing world. So share this episode with them, and by all means, get their book, He Said, She Said, Branding. It's a wonderful read. It's so much fun, and I pulled away a number of nuggets with that. If I can be of service to you, come on over to businessofstory.com, where I've got tips, tools, techniques, and talent just like these two wonderful people there, just waiting to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And until next week, when we will have some more amazing story artists here like Jaci and Michael, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks so much for being there. All right.